With everything going on in the world, people need to be uplifted. They need something that promotes character, creativity, confidence, and joy. The GRN show is not just an average talk show. The topics are powerful and will make you think. Join me on this journey to be informed, to relate, to connect, and to evolve. Good evening. Welcome to the GRN show, and it is a pleasure for me to bring in issues that really impact our lives. You know, Tonight, we're going to have a conversation that many people may not feel comfortable about. But in reality, for the betterment of our community, we must be able to really talk about some of those issues and just to highlight the level of conversation we will have. It's really about equity, racial relations. We have seen a lot of chaos. We have seen a lot of division over the last few months. And I am so pleased that many communities are taking steps forward to really ensure that some of the gaps and the disparities are really rectified. I realized that being an immigrant, it took me a while to fully understand the dynamic range of racial inequities. And the disparities do exist. One of the examples I'll give you is that you have two individuals with a substance abuse problem. You have the Caucasian and you have the person of color. But guess what? The Caucasian may be sent to treatment and the person of color may be sent to jail. This is what we're referring to as institutionalized racial inequities. In fact, a few years ago, the county embarked on an initiative to dismantle racism. And what they've done is really work with establishments and institutions to really look at the processes, to look at the steps involved to provide service, to ensure any barriers are removed. But this Tuesday, they have taken an intentional leap to really work towards correcting or rectifying some of the racial inequalities that exist within our system. And I am so pleased to bring this guest with me, none other but Commissioner Dale Holness. And before he speaks, I want to say he is the sponsor of the Racial Equity Task Force, which is the ordinance that the county adopted just a few days ago. He really sees the opportunity for us to really close the moment is now. So without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce to you former Mayor Dale Holness, as well as now Commissioner Dale Holness. Welcome, Commissioner.
Buenas tardes, bonsoir, good afternoon to everyone. And thank you for having me on, Gitel. I'm honored to be of service to the people of Broward County. I started in Lauderdale Hill in 2004 as a city commissioner there after running twice and losing.
Wow.
The third time I won in 2004. And then in 2010, I was elected to the county commission seat. Folks didn't believe I would be able to be elected, but I worked hard. I had dedicated myself to serving our community, and I was rewarded for doing so in the city of Lauderdale and the broader Broward County. And since then, I've been serving as the District 9 County Commissioner. And as you rightly pointed out, in 2019, I was made the mayor of Broward County and worked through this pandemic. And one of the things that the pandemic taught me, and it should teach every one of us, is that as human beings, we are connected.
Mm-hmm.
What affects one affects the other. Mm-hmm. And across the globe, not just in the local community, but across the globe. This virus started in China, and it's every place on the globe now because we're that connected. And we must work together as human beings to make life better for all of us.
Great, and that brings me right into the question of the ordinance, which is really the laws of Broward County. Creating the racial equity task force was your vision. Tell us a little bit about where that came from and what you anticipate with the implementation of the task force.
So in probably most of my life, I've looked at the inequities that exist, the inequalities that exist, the disparities that exist between blacks and white within this nation and outside of this nation. It's really global. And we saw the facts came up bare in front of our eyes with the murder of George Floyd by that police officer. And we saw through this pandemic how it affects Black people and brown people much more greatly than others. And I've been working for a few years now on what I call the Broad Black Action Plan. And that was a plan to look at these disparities, these inequalities, and bring about solutions to them. And I'll give you some of them. When you look at the income gap, Blacks make only about 60% of what whites make in this country. Black households have 1/10 of the wealth that white households have. Blacks are twice as likely to be unemployed as whites. Home ownership for Blacks is only at about 45% compared to 70% for whites. So and that's just on the economic side. When you look at the health side, a Black woman is more likely to have her child die at birth than twice as much as a white person. When you look also at the diabetes, we are more likely to suffer from that. When you look at lack of healthcare facilities within our communities, it's huge. And then you look also at the criminal justice side. Twice as likely to be stopped for not wearing a seatbelt in Broward County if you're Black than if you're white. We are likely to be sentenced to 20% longer sentence if you're Black than if you're white for the same crime. Someone shoplifted $500, a Black person will get a longer sentence than a white person. When you look at our children, the arrest for Black children in Broward County is at about 70% compared to white children at about 12%. That's huge. So there's a whole system that's there that needs to be restructured and changed in order to create equity for the Black community.
And go ahead. Yeah.
And we look at the fact that if we change that, the whole country, the whole community benefits. And there are several studies that have been done by reputable organizations. McKinsey did one that said if we change the disparity, the inequality of wealth in this country for Black folks, that alone would increase the gross domestic product, the productivity of our country by $1.5 trillion. Citi did a study recently that said for the past 20 years, we've lost 16 trillion in economic output as a country because of these inequalities that exist. And if we were to change it now, in the next 5 years, we could grow the economy by $5 trillion. Everyone, Black, white, everyone benefits when we get rid of these inequalities that exist and this disparity that exists amongst people of color.
Which brings me to the next question, Commissioner. You know, over the years, I have seen initiatives where, again, we're trying to really close the gap and remove disparities, particularly when you have programs like Women and Minority-Owned Business Program. Many years ago, they were race-based. You could call it a Black Business Program or Minority Women. Nevertheless, over the years, that has been watered because they've, I guess, many communities, I would say different states, primarily the conservative states, felt that race-based programs were not constitutional. So where do you see that play into the Racial Equity Task Force and its initiatives?
So I can tell you this, that in Broward County, we had that. And just before I came to the county commission in 2010, I think about 2008, it was abolished because there was a lawsuit by large firms that says you can't do this. It's not fair. even though they were getting the majority of the money anyhow, in terms of contracts. And based on that, the courts ruled that unless you have a study that shows that, you're not going to be able to put race-based programs in place or gender-based place program. We did a study in 2010 that was reported out in 2011 at the county, and it showed that there was anecdotal
Evidence.
in our process and our awards for contracts. However, there was not enough documentation to actually factually prove it. So we weren't able to continue that. But that's one of the things that we want to look at in our policies to see how we change that. I can tell you that since I've been at the county, by sheer will and push and shove and fight, we've been able to increase the amount of participation for minority and women-owned contractors using what we call a county business enterprise program, because I went out and recruited as many as I could to get in. And then we fought to make sure that we have, though it's race and gender neutral, we know most of our businesses, Black-owned business, are smaller business, not as well capitalized. So we have sheltered program for the small businesses. We have a goal set in each contract for small businesses, and those include the minority and women-owned contracts, contractors and businesses. So that's worked there a bit. But the system is so structured that it's very difficult for us to be able to be at equity. For example, loan procurement from banks. If you go in and apply for a loan, you're 5 times likely to be turned down than if you're white, if you're Black. So you don't have the capital to go out and grow and build your business.
So there is hope, and we must continue to move forward in that arena. You know, another arena that is very common when people talk about equity is employment. And perhaps in the 90s, it was a lot more feasible for organizations to say, okay, if we have 2 qualified people and there is an underrepresentation, we'll make sure we'll hire someone to further diversify, whether it's a woman or a minority. I think between the business and employment, there is strong, there's been initiatives to really correct that. And, you know, we're still trying to close the gaps. Now, there are other areas I was quite surprised to see when people go for certain services. It could be social services or human services. The paperwork could be voluminous. The process for them to get the services could be voluminous. Therefore, I look often as those as discouraging tactics and really removing access. Tell me a little bit about how that plays within institutions and how we're going to tackle that.
So basically, the Racial Equity Task Force is comprised of people, regular folks, the NAACP, the Urban League. It comprised of the educational system. It comprised the healthcare system in Broward County, a large corporation, the Broward Workshop, the Chambers of Commerce, the Broward Alliance, Greater Fort Lauderdale Alliance, which is a huge business group, cities, counties, criminal justice system, everybody there. What we must do is look at these policies that we have and see whether or not they limit access to certain groups of people, and then restructure how we conduct business, put those policies in place that give access to opportunities to all people, and in some instance, focus on the communities that have been left out by ensuring that they get a special access. One of the things that we're doing at the county, and this has been pushed since I got there, is that we look at the zip codes that have the highest unemployment, highest poverty, and now we're targeting more resources in those communities. Guess what? We're not saying race, but we know that those communities are primarily Black communities. So we are able to do that, and it's a policy change that no one can say, well, you're discriminating against white folks. We're saying we're looking to help those who are greatest need, who has the greatest need, because that policy doesn't talk about race. But we know that implied in that is that there are more Black people in those communities that are in need of help. And because there's so many Black people in there, those communities are the ones that have the higher poverty, higher unemployment, and greater need for support and help.
And truly, you can go into those communities when you look at the employment rate, when you look at the skills of the individuals, you know, you can pretty much determine that is a pocket of the community that we must focus on. And I do agree with you. If we're not thriving, all of us, it's really a disservice to the community. Now, tell us further about the number of people on the task force and why you have selected those individuals. I've talked a little bit about the social services and human services. Tell me a little bit about how you see those who are part of the task force assist in eliminating or rectifying whatever institutionalized racism they see in their systems.
So a big part of what I did was to ensure that we have large corporate entities at the table. Because though the government is able to do certain things, corporations control billions more dollars than the government. Corporation has a lot more people employed than the government. And what I want to make sure they understand is this, that when you increase access and opportunities for every human being to live to their fullest potential and remove blocks that would stop Black folks from being able to access these opportunities, you're going to grow an economy far greater than it is now. And you'll create prosperity for all people. And as those communities that have been left behind and locked out, and oftentimes locked up, get opportunities to prosper, everyone else prospers as a result. You're not taking anything from anyone else. You're actually growing the pie or the cake, so to speak.
It's like a garden. The difference is the more the flowers bloom, the more beautiful the garden is. So that's one of the analogies I could think of. That's how we thrive as a people, not only Black people, but everyone in that community will benefit from that. Something else I want to talk about is here in Broward County, we have the opportunity to really change the structure. We have recently elected 5 individuals who will lead the constitutional offices. So what role do they play in the Racial Equity Task Force?
Very important roles they play. And I'm grateful to have been a part of that effort to get the state attorney, the public defender, the clerk of the courts, the sheriffs, and the supervisor of elections elected. And what it does is this. It now brings a group of people who were outside of the system into the system to set policy. And they bring a different lived experience to the table. And their experience being lived as Black people make them understand the need for changing the system. And that is what I expect to see from these folks. And I'm already in talks with many of them to change the system. And I can tell you that it's already being changed. When I look at the sheriff's office and I see the change in the leadership, the top brass is far more reflective today of what Broward County looks like than it did prior to Sheriff Tony getting there. I look at that system at the sheriff's office, and I can tell you this, that when I got elected in 2010 to the Broward County Commission, only 26 of the almost 800 firefighters were Black.
Wow.
And I approached then Sheriff Lamberti and told him that was wrong. And he agreed. By a year later, we went to 32. And 5 of the 26 were made lieutenants. Today, we're now at 80. So there's some growth that has occurred. It's still not where it should be because Blacks make up 30% of the population. And if we want to really look at it, we should be well over 200. So that's progress that's being made. And Sheriff Tony has agreed to change the system in a structural way to ensure that there are opportunities for mentoring, there are opportunities for recruitment, to reach out to these communities that have been left behind, to put some scholarship dollars into where the underserved communities are, and to help move that process. So that's just one part of the structure that is being changed already. We are looking to see more of that structure, that system change in the county to ensure that, again, Black people who've been left out, locked and locked up, now have opportunity to live to their fullest potential, removing the barriers that exist and enhancing the opportunity that can be brought forward so we can be a more prosperous community for all of us.
Timing is perfect, because like you mentioned, they will be sensitive to the plight of Black, brown people and will more or less be willing and able to make those changes. I think it's a very exciting time for us here in Broward County. So my last question to you, Commissioner, is let's say we're down the road 5 years from now. What would you like to see happen with the Racial Equity Advisory Task Force?
Okay, I'd like to see change in the system, change in the structure, policy changes. But what I'd love to be able to do is look 5 years from now, and instead of saying that 38% of Black children in Broward County live in poverty, that we can take that down at least 20%, to say, or even more than that, to say, well, no more than 28%. So we can see a good drop in that and a progression to where we can eliminate that disparity that exists, where only 12% of white kids live in poverty compared to 38% of Black kids. Wow. That's good. Where I can say, you know what, instead of 70% of Black kids being arrested for minor stuff oftentimes, that we can see that to where it matches the rest of the community. Mm-hmm. If that's an issue. Where in this case, again, only about 12-13% of white kids are arrested compared to the amount of people arrested is only about 12-13% white compared to 70% for Blacks. That's a huge difference that we need to fix. So those are the things that I'm looking to see. I'm looking to see where the civil citation program that we have, that part of what I worked on a few years ago for adults, is being implemented so that someone who shoplift for $100, $200 doesn't get locked up in the jail, and we pay $161 a night, and they might stay there for 30 days because they can't afford a bail for $200-300 because they didn't have it in the first place, lose their kids, the kids go in the system, lose their jobs, and we are worse off for it because now we're going to have to find social service programs to take care of the folks that are now in the system. So I'm looking forward to where we have more harmony with our community. And I got to tell you this, I'm so heartened by the number of people and organizations that have stepped up to say we want to be a part of it. Yes. Folks, more people are calling me to be a part of it than we have seats at the table right now. We're at 37. It's still a large board, but others are saying, can I be a part of this? Can I do something with this? The Broward workshop was on at the meeting yesterday online, telling us that they want to support it. The Chamber of Commerce want to support it. Broward College has already started to do Broward Up. The Greater Fort Lauderdale Alliance is trying to do things that the Black community, Black organization like NAACP, like the Urban League have been trying to do for a long time, is now being joined by these major entities that says we want to be a part of the solution and help make Broward County a better place for all of us and create greater prosperity for all of us.
That is terrific. And really, it will take all of us working hand in hand to make it happen. I think what you've mentioned is you want to see the gaps closed. It may take a while to fully close the gaps, and maybe the gaps may never be fully closed. There will still be disparities. Nevertheless, we don't want them in the 2 digits. We want to, over time, see improvement all the time. And I imagine, will there be an annual report? Will there be, how will the policymakers know that it is working?
So we will have a dashboard that shows these disparities. We'll have annual reports that shows the disparities and see the progress that we are making, so that it's transparent and all of us see exactly where we are and how we're moving this community forward to create a better place for all of us to live.
Commissioner, I can't thank you enough. Congratulations on taking the step forward. We're very appreciative of your effort, including those of the mayor and other commissioners of Broward County. We're going on the right direction. And right now, the timing could not be perfect. Thank you for being with us, and I look forward to hearing more about the Racial Equity Task Force.
Thank you for having me on, and let me thank the people of Broward County for giving me the honor of being able to serve them and to be in a leadership role where I can lead on this issue and others. We passed the Police Criminal Justice Review Board 2 months ago. We passed the Crown Act, where you can't be discriminated against in Broward County because you wear weave, but you're breaking hair, or you wear locks, or you wear an afro. We are about to hopefully create a holiday for Juneteenth where we celebrate the liberation of enslaved African people in this country. So we are making progress, certainly.
Thank you again, and we'll come back with follow-ups maybe next year to see where we are. We're very happy of this initiative, and whatever we can do, let us know. We'll be able to just outreach to the community and really let them know this is what's happening, because I think it gives every one of us hope, and that's what inspires us.
Muchas gracias, Missy. And Phil, thank you very much for the work that you're doing also.
Have you ever dreamt of having your own television show? If you have, then I have the perfect solution and television station for you to reach hundreds of thousands of viewers. Aries Vision is a television company and media company that can help you get your show on the air. They have tools to help you decide the right platform, like Roku, which is growing, and they absolutely can help you decide between a half an hour slot or an hour slot and get your show on the air fast. Give them a call at 954-990-8056 or email them at ariesvisionllc@gmail.com to get your dream off the ground.
Good evening, Dorothy, and welcome to another episode of the GRN Show. We had quite an intriguing dialogue with Commissioner Dale Holness, who was talking about a racial equity task force that they've created in Broward County. So with that, tell us a little bit, what do you have for us this evening at Dorothy's Coaching Corner?
Well, good evening, Gitel. Hope you're doing well. Well, today our topic is actually on point, and we will be talking about today in Dorothy's Corner, embracing our world of diversity. So it just comes right into line with that. With our world being globalized and a vast melting pot of diversity, it's so important to understand, to live, and also to work with people around us and our community in order to continue our life learning process. So diversity today and inclusion is so important and is needed in order to overcome many, many different stigmas and biases in our community today to move forward in today's world. So I have about 3 tips I really want to go ahead and go through and actually give to the audience, so that way if they feel they need to practice these things, this will definitely help them with embracing diversity and inclusion. So we're going to start off by talking about engaging in multicultural community events or even activities. For example, like cultural festivals, if there's any kind of cultural festivals that may be going on in your community, that's a great way to go ahead and start. Just by attending some, to be able to see different things, possibly that maybe you're not even used to going to. So that's a nice way to start off, by engaging in multicultural community events or even festivals that may be going on around town. Also, identify learning experiences. This is another area that I tell everyone. A good example of doing things like that is possibly just going to a restaurant that may serve cultural foods. For example, it can be Asian, it can be Indian, it can be Caribbean, it can be European. These are some great ways to go through some learning processes of tasting different things, possibly that you're not even used to probably tasting or eating, and just learning from them. And then finally, and also be tolerant. Having that type of behavior is so important. Being respectful to others, whether it's their religion or is their culture or their tradition. And like I said, learning from all of these things. So these are the 3 top areas that I like to go ahead and share with everyone, that if you want to go ahead and just be involved in embracing diversity and inclusion, those are great ways to start.
I love it. Well, the one I like the most is the one about going to different restaurants and tasting different foods. I have to tell you, I'm very adventurous when it comes to eating, and I love to try something new. So I'm hoping somebody can take a little bit of what you've said tonight, because we are a global world, and all of us really, we're all the same inside. So great tips, Dorothy. And those are things we can pass on to our children, because I believe at one point we will be all, like the commissioner said, we're all suffering from this pandemic. None of us have been spared. So we've got to be able to live and really create harmonious communities. Thank you, Dorothy. And until next time, I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks a lot for having me again.
Welcome back to the GRN show. And as we've approached the end of our episode tonight, I just want to say it was a wonderful, wonderful dialogue. And obviously, we all can partake in really participating in changes in our communities. In that regard, I hope this show really was helpful, as well as gives you some hope, because we're seeing all kinds of things in different communities, and here in our own community we recognize we're not perfect, but together we can make things happen, particularly ensure that everyone has access to opportunities. So once again, we thank you for watching another episode of the GRN show, and until next time, good evening and enjoy your Saturday night. Good night.